Hi, I'm Melissa Bill, and welcome to the Business Roundup, where we catch up with the business movers and shakers in the business world. Today, joining me is Matt Spencer. He's the co-founder and CEO of Suited. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Melissa.
Now, first of all, I like to have each guest kind of start off by talking a little bit about their background and kind of what got you started in this particular, type of segment of the industry.
Sure. So my background was actually initially as an investment banker. I spent about 8 years post MBA doing M&A advisory at Houlihan Lokey. Subsequently moved over to the talent side of the business where I got very involved in kind of all the talent management strategies. Served 4 years as the chief human capital officer at the firm, really running all the talent management programs globally. And from there, ultimately in 2019, came up with the idea for Suited and ultimately set out to build and launch the platform that we've been working on since.
And now, the initial vision behind Suited, how has that vision kind of evolved as AI technology has kind of matured?
Yeah, well, initially our first product that we launched was really focused on campus recruitment for entry level positions across professional services firms. You know, candidates who are coming straight out of undergrad or MBA programs for the financial services industry, or coming out of law school for law firms. And really, in these industries, firms have thousands of candidates that are applying for only a small number of jobs. And historically, despite the large pool of potential candidates, firms were really locked into that classic rubric of where did a candidate go to school? What was the GPA they got while they were there? Neither of which are really correlated with long term performance on the job. And so, what Suited originally and initially set out to do was to be able to bring more data to hiring decisions, to leverage behavioral science and machine learning technology in order to help firms make better hiring decisions. Goal of that was really being to expand their recruitment process, consider a wider range of candidates, and really increasing the performance and the retention of those candidates over the long term. Now, as AI has matured, we've expanded our product focus to really help firms not just look at those entry level positions, but also source experience or what we call lateral professionals and fill those more kind of mid career roles, not just on the early side. And in this segment of the market, the problems that firms face is very different. The challenge is really more in identifying and engaging candidates to fill those open roles versus having huge numbers that are just concentrated and aggregated there on school campuses. It's really the challenge is to source and find those candidates and unlock them and get them interested and engaged in roles. And really, where the status quo of manual searches through LinkedIn or engaging high cost headhunters just weren't adequate solutions. And so, as that technology has evolved, it has allowed us to really build products that are focused on kind of unlocking a different part of the talent market.
And now, what major shifts have you kind of observed in the hiring landscape?
Yeah, one major one that I will tell you is so we focus very specifically on industry verticals. So financial services and law being the two that we focus on today. One major shift that happened in the legal market is that law firms historically used to recruit from law school using a highly structured process that was called on-campus interviews or OCI. And over the past several years, driven by a lot of different things and things that took place in the market, whether it was disruption from COVID, moved to more virtual-based interviews, law firms have really moved to a more of a direct application model where candidates are applying direct to firms rather than through that organized process that was held by their law schools. This process now occurs earlier in a candidate's law school career, meaning there's just less information for firms to use to base their hiring decisions. And the combination of having significantly more candidates that are applying and then the limited information in order to make hiring decisions really necessitated the need for technology driven solutions that could empower firms to make great hiring decisions at scale. We have, over the years that we've been working in the legal industry, spent a significant amount of time building trusted relationships with participants across that market. And so, as that shift occurred and that changing dynamic, just how firms approach the market, how they approach their recruitment processes, really enabled our business to create an impact, and it really took off in the legal space.
That's interesting. Now, kind of fast forward, how do you see the role of recruiters changing as AI is becoming more integrated in this hiring process?
Yeah, so it's really, we think about AI as a tool that can enable human-led decision making. It's not about replacing it or making decisions. It's really about augmenting and empowering recruiters, and leveraging AI in their processes so that recruiters can spend less time on lower value and manual tasks like sourcing candidates, reviewing resumes, and really invest more time in engaging with high potential candidates. So it's about really empowering them and creating opportunity for them to take more ownership, more involvement in that process, because we can take some of those kind of lower order tasks off their plate. And I think that's one thing that you'll hear me say over and over again is we are 100% believers that technology, whether it's AI or otherwise, should be leveraged to really empower human judgment. Human agency and judgment must remain a critical component of hiring. So none of our products that we build at Suited really make any hiring decisions whatsoever. Instead, they're just about collecting data, interpreting data, providing it to humans so that they can make smarter, faster hiring decisions.
Right, it's kind of filtering that data out and making it a little bit easier for them.
Correct. Yeah, and being able to do it at scale, and quickly, right? That's another thing. Hiring processes highly competitive, especially in these industries that we serve. Firms need to be able to move fast, make quick decisions, but those decisions still need to be the right ones.
And now, how does Suited's AI go beyond the simple keyword matching to assess a candidate's like potentials, their soft skills, and different things like that?
Yeah, so we don't really use keyword matching at all. I'll differentiate between our two products in terms of historically what we focused on the campus side, and then what we've launched now on the lateral hiring side. On the campus hiring side, we have a suite of assessments that we built and developed that look at and understand candidates' behavioral and cognitive skills. So when we start working with a firm, we will typically have some cohort of their existing professionals go through and complete that suite of assessments. We'll collect performance data from the firm on those individuals, all of which is anonymized. And then we use machine learning technology in order to build and understand what are the different patterns of behavior that are ultimately driving success inside that one unique firm. That then creates a model that candidates can ultimately be screened and scored against to say how similar is that candidate's pattern of behaviors to others. So it's really about not just looking for keywords that show up on a resume or matching those things, but understanding who people are, how they show up to work, and how that fits in the overall fabric of the firm in which they work. On the lateral side of our business, the new product that we've launched, we have built AI agents that are effectively automating a lot of the work for sourcing, identifying, contacting, and engaging with candidates. And they're really designed not to look at keywords, but are trained to analyze a large body of both proprietary and public information on individual candidate experience, and then use industry specific indicators of candidate potential, including behavioral data via our assessments where we have those. And then with all of that data in context, we're able to identify and categorize and quantify the specific type of experience a candidate has and make a judgment about the fit for the role. So we're not just looking at keywords and trying to match those up. We're leveraging AI to better understand in depth what it is that somebody's done, what is the body of work experience they have, and how does that relate to what a firm that has an open role ultimately needs and is looking for.
So it's a little bit of an overall look at that individual.
Correct. It's less about saying, does this word line up and match to this, and more being able to leverage AI, LLM technology, et cetera, in order to really dive in depth and understand who the individual is, put that in context with all the industry specific nuances, and say this person does or does not have the requisite experience that's ultimately required.
And now with AI, I know a lot of people, there's the other aspect of it, like given the sensitive nature of candidate and firm data, what protocols and technologies are in place to ensure data privacy and security are met within Suited's platform?
Yeah, great question. It's really critical when it comes to data privacy, and that's really foundational to all of the products that we build at Suited. Starting with the fact that candidates have full control over their data. We're also compliant with all privacy regulations in the markets we serve, including CCPA and GDPR. All of our models are also, our AI-driven models are also third-party audited for adverse impact on an annual basis, ensuring that we're complying with federal EEOC guidelines, New York City Local Law 144, and then other regulatory requirements. And then on the security side, we built the product to be SOC 2 compliant. We follow all enterprise grade standards. Additionally, I think there's an important component, which is that we limit the data that we collect to only what is necessary to perform the functions that are required by both clients and candidates. So the surface area of exposure and information that we have out there, whether it's privacy or InfoSec related, is really minimized. That's everything from the training data that we collect on incumbents being anonymized when we collect it. And then for candidates, we're not capturing information that we don't need that might be particularly sensitive, like social security numbers or financial data or health information. So by limiting the surface area of risk and exposure on those sort of things, we can really ensure that we're providing the best overall system when it comes to privacy and security.
And what are students' key development priorities and strategic goals for the next couple of months? Like, where do you see things going?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're really leaning heavily into expanding that new lateral product. It's really the number one priority because it's such a pain point for firms that status quo of spending a significant amount of time with internal recruiting teams doing manual research to try and identify candidates, outreaching, oftentimes going unresponded to. And then on the alternative side, the expense that goes with, hiring a headhunter to do all that work for you. And so we think there's this huge gap that exists in the marketplace where data and technology can really create an impact for firms. And so leaning heavily into that is really a kind of a core focus of ours. The other piece is that really thinking about expanding the industries we serve. So I mentioned that we're very focused on finance and law. On the finance side of our business, historically, we've been very focused on working with investment banks. That's where my old background, that's where we ultimately started the business. But we believe we can create similar impacts that we have in investment banking and law to other areas of finance like private equity, hedge funds, wealth and asset management, accounting firms, et cetera. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the reality is there's lots of opportunities in highly specialized industry verticals, especially focused on the upper end of the professional services marketplace, which is where we really see these tools being able to have a substantial impact.
And how does Suited plan to stay ahead of the curve in rapidly changing, as far as like AI is changing and it's kind of evolving? How are you going to kind of stay on that end of that emergent technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes, Melissa, with starting with an understanding about that we're really committed to responsible innovation. We want to use AI where it adds value, not just for the sake of doing it. So, where's there an opportunity? Where's there a pain point? Where's there a place that AI can really create an impact in how it's leveraged? And then our overall technology roadmap is really shaped by what I'll call real world hiring friction. We're not building tools just for the sake of building tools. We're solving real problems that firms, in particular our current clients, have every single day. And so that's really what we're focused on being able to impact. And then I think, as the overall hiring landscape changes, things like remote and hybrid work, what that kind of entry level positions, how many, who people hire. All of those things are sort of in flux, and firms are experimenting with different models and establishing those things. And our tools, in particular, are understanding how people are going to show up to work and the behavioral patterns that ultimately drive them. In a world where remote and hybrid work and people work from home and those sorts of things, traits like autonomy, communication, how people interact and collaborate are increasingly critical to success when you're not necessarily in an office every single day working side by side with your peers. And so the platform that we have built is really able to adapt and understand and look at opportunities to further firms' hiring efforts in that regard.
And that kind of brings us to the next point. Like, what kind of metrics are you using to evaluate these things to kind of get like that, understand that candidate and how to match them correctly for these roles?
Yeah, I mean, another great question because I think, the reality is that any tool, technology or otherwise, only as good as the results it delivers. And those results have to be measured and ultimately reported on to hold ourselves accountable to, are we actually delivering ROI? That's something that we've leaned very heavily into in terms of not just delivering a technology and a solution, but also how do you measure its impact? In our world, ultimately, the impact that firms are looking for is, are we hiring people who are going to be better performers and who are going to stay longer? So performance and retention metrics are really the things that we look at. How does long-term performance and retention actually map back and correlate with the outcomes that were predicted leveraging the technology? So we regularly analyze and report those results to clients just as a core part of our process. And then we also hold ourselves accountable to both the efficiency and fairness of the process that we're delivering as we're, creating that.
We talked about it, but now the envision is kind of to scale this eventually suited to like other industries and other, it might not just be like the upper levels, maybe even entry level, like what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we think that the kind of underlying components that map to all the different products that we're delivering today and could deliver in the future really have value throughout the life cycle of a candidate and employee. So we really want to be the go-to solution for what we'll call performance aligned hiring and talent decisions that are in the upper end of the professional services industry. So we're already in legal, finance, it can be consulting, it can be any of those industries where you have a large number of firms hiring a large number of people into relatively similar positions. That's where we really see the kind of opportunity for tools like this to work extremely well. And over the long term, we think that we can not just support hiring decisions, but all of the talent decisions that are going in, not just who somebody hires, but how do you support and retain them after the fact? So things like performance management, retention, all those different components. And really, regardless, our kind of core belief that underpins everything stays the same, which is just that better data leads to better decisions, and better decisions unlock opportunity for everyone. So we think there's an opportunity to really expand beyond just hiring into a broader scope of the talent management landscape.
And just like as other industries are trying to kind of figure this out too, what are Suited's principles? What are Suited's principles and guiding philosophies regarding the ethical deployment of AI? A lot of like industries are kind of looking at this at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of core things that we really hold true to, regardless of whether what we have built or what we plan to build in the future. The first, I'll link back to something I said before, which is that AI should really be used to enhance human decision making, not replace it. It's not about replacing human judgment and agency. It's about empowering humans to do more, to do better. So that's one, I think, really critical component of it. The other is that fairness and transparency really need to guide everything. I mentioned we audit our models, and are making sure that they are resulting in accurate outcomes, fair outcomes. We want to make sure that candidates and firms both understand how they work. So being transparent about what the technology is, how it's being deployed, how it's being used, looking at those results and measuring those things. And then the final one I'll say is that any AI driven output, especially ones that are being used in critical function areas like hiring, who gets a job, who keeps a job, all those things across the talent landscape, is that any AI driven output needs to be explainable, consistent. And I think that's another really critical thing when we think about the deployment of our technology. What are the appropriate types of AI to use for specific situations? those are really going to be the things that we have in mind as we develop them.
And move forward. And if people, now this is on a national level, do you work with companies and candidates like nationally?
We do, yeah. So most of our firms have kind of a national footprint. So we're, working across the U.S. We also work with a handful of firms in the UK as well. There certainly are, the challenges and the problems that firms face aren't just nationally or local. They're international as well. And so we see a lot of opportunity on the global scale.
That industry. Now, if people wanted more information about the company, what would be the best way to find it?
Yes, I mean, our website is wellsuited.com. You can certainly go there and find out more information. We're also on LinkedIn and happy to connect with firms or individuals as their interests.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Actually, I think that in the name too, I like that, well suited, because a lot of times it costs people a lot of money, to hire people, and then to find out that the person's not going to stay. It's, definitely something that can bridge that gap and that situation.
100%. There's huge costs both to executing on these things and then even higher costs to getting those decisions wrong. And that's really where we think, again, back to that statement I made before, that better data drives better decisions and better outcomes. And so that's really what the focus of all the different pieces that we develop is really being able to reduce that cost through efficiency on the front end, but through accuracy on the back end as well.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Melissa. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Hi, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Business Roundup. If you haven't already, please subscribe or follow us on Instagram or YouTube. Also, feel free to leave comments below on topics you'd like us to cover. Until next time, I'm Melissa Bell.